We don't have that kind of granite here in Texas. Okay. That's 8x8 Cypress. This is my test piece. The posts, the timber frame posts are gonna be that size. Of course, this has been sawed down, but this is kind of my test piece. Marking out a perimeter, and then I'm gonna do some real basic carving to just kind of give some character and definition to this granite. Woodbury gray granite or salt and pepper granite. It's from Vermont, and I'm really, really happy with it. If you saw previous videos, I was using limestone, but they just, I don't know, just a little too soft, not strong enough. This is the right stone for what I'm doing. Should be 2 inches from this to this. There are more perfect ways to do this, but since I'm not machining anything, I prefer to just kind of use my eye as much as possible. The eye isn't a muscle, but it's kind of like a muscle, and that the more you use it, the better you get at just kind of getting a confidence in your own visual ability to take measure of things. To me, that looks pretty good. Now I'll connect these corners using a straight edge. So I'm gonna take this flat chisel and take off some of the texture where I'll follow that with the tooth chisel. The taking off the texture will make it a little smoother and easier to get those grooves in with the tooth chisel. And then I'm also gonna use a rasp to take off that 90-degree edge, just so I don't break off chunks of it with either chisel. Just taking off that very tippy top layer of texture. creating a little bit of a kind of bullnose. Also contrast with this texture of stone and then this texture. Just kind of a little transition, a little bit of handiwork too, so it's not so just plucked out of the ground kind of look. A little bit of style. Okay, so one change I've made from when I was carving the limestone is I've gone from using a hardened steel chisel. Let's see here. Now I'm using a carbide tip steel chisel. Hardened steel one was good for limestone, but now that I moved to granite, that thing doesn't work at all. The shadows and light aren't as dramatic as on the limestone. I guess because with the limestone it's white, and so you see all the shadows so clearly, and the relief is just very distinct and stands out. Whereas because this is salt and pepper, and it's just it's you don't see that stark contrast. So a little bit of a trade-off, but I'm willing to take it. So I'm still happy with it, but the limestone looked really cool. If you recall from a previous video, for the model that I made, the physical model of this structure, I whitewashed the surface and then went back and chamfered edges to kind of create this cool contrast between the whitewash and the wood color. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that with this now. Just a reminder, this is Cypress. I did not sharpen my plane iron. It's going pretty fast. It's still pretty sharp. Kind of cool to see the difference between the kind of gray skin that it acquires when it's weathered and then the true color of the cypress. This is called checking. It's when as the green wood dries, it kind of splits, but it's not always a bad thing necessarily. Checking. So I'm going to bring all four sides to this, and then we're going to whitewash that. We're going to do our first layer of whitewash and see what that looks like. I don't normally like painting wood but I really want the whitewash look in the desert. And the embellishments I'm going to do on the wood will bring out the cypress color as I cut into the whitewashed areas. So it'll provide a nice contrast. So now we'll apply a little whitewash, see how that looks. Cypress is a cool wood. It grows all over central Texas on the rivers and streams. It's kind of cool to use it. I've actually never worked with cypress before, so. This probably isn't the best towel to be using for this, but it's fine. I'm only gonna do 3 sides because I want to leave the true cypress color on the 4th side, just so I can kind of compare and contrast. Since I'm still in kind of a model making mode, even though I'm getting closer to the real thing, the stakes are still not so high that I have to make the final decision on things. So if for some reason I don't like the way the whitewash looks, I'll still have that one side of natural cypress to look at. The idea with whitewashing is that, or stain, I mean, it's really kind of a white stain. The idea is that you could still see the wood grain and the patterns beneath it. So you don't want it so thick that it's like paint. You want to still be able to see the grain. This is the first layer, and then that's the natural cypress. Keep on to say cedar. Let that dry for a little bit, and then I'll put on another coat. Okay, that's that's the second coat. So there, raw cedar, cypress. I keep calling it cedar, cypress, and then that's 2 coats. 0, 2. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do 3 coats, but I'm just gonna do 3 coats on 2 of the faces. That way I'll have a 0, a 2, and then 3, and then maybe I'll do a 4th coat on one of the faces, and then I'll have a full kind of sample. Here's 0, here's 2, 0, 3. I'm happy with this whitewash. It's waterproof. It's a sealant, so there's no other products that I have to add. I don't need to add primer in the beginning, and I don't need to add a final sealant. I had thought about doing like a lime wash, you know, like hand make like a lime wash, the traditional whitewash from way back when. But that needs to be reapplied. I think like I don't know, maybe even every year or two, especially in a hot desert climate. I'm not sure. It just seems like a little more maintenance. And I've got so many moving parts on this thing that I can't do that. So the stain should hopefully like last 5 or 6 years before it needs to be reapplied. Um, so waterproof, somewhat semi-permanent, and um, it's water based, so it should still breathe, allow the wood to breathe. So I'm pretty happy with it. Just kind of cleaning up that inner wall. A little trick is you can go a little deeper and it creates a shadow. Even when there's not the type of sun angle that would create a shadow, you get a little black line if it goes deeper, if it goes deep enough. I don't know how to explain that, but kind of just a little trick. It's a cool contrast, right? The kind of like tan blonde with the bleach white. Just looks cool to me, especially out in the desert. It reminds me of an old bone, an old bleached bone. I don't know. I just like the look. I didn't get it from someone or somewhere. I just kind of, when I was thinking about the structure, I just kind of gravitated. I was like, immediately, I was like, that's going to have to be whitewashed somehow. It needs to look like an old bone. You know, every idea kind of has its downside, and I can already tell that the maintenance on this over time can get a little tricky, because while it's probably not a big deal to keep the whitewash, you know what, every 5 or 6 years to reapply it, how do you keep this as fresh looking as it is now? You know what I mean? Like, that's going to want to weather and silver. So you could put some kind of sealant on it, but how often do you have to apply that sealant? Every time you fiddle with it, do you have to sand off some tiny little micro layer of wood to bring that fresh wood back up? In which case, over time, you're going to wash out the whole, sharpness and crispness of the chamfering. And so, some things to think about. There's always trade-offs. I was always told there's no solutions, only trade-offs, and that's usually pretty true. Make sure to chop straight down. Just pointing out that I'm trying to actually make this like a little bit of a dish, not just straight, but actually down and then kind of up. So I maybe a bowl, more like a bowl. See how there's a curve? It's not just straight. It's like in and then kind of curving out. Okay. Then as you can see here, it also looks really cool natural. I'm not gonna lie, it does. Looks cool like that too. 0 coats of stain, 2 coats, 3 coats, 4 coats. I did do 4 even though I said I wasn't. So